All right. Good morning, everyone. Again, thanks for being here. If you were able to be here live, for those of you who couldn't be, this will be recorded for posterity. We're here today to talk about uh, our change in agency policy, getting rid of the agency to agency commission compensation model, which I think will go over fairly smoothly, but I'm sure it's any change is always a little bit nerve-wracking, but after all we've been through the past couple years, I think this will be a fairly minor change. But I'm actually going to go ahead and share my ZipForm screen and essentially start there. And since I have sort of a captive audience today, and we haven't met in a long time, I am going to take about 10 minutes to do a little quick refresher on a few things, which will hopefully be helpful to some of you. For some of you who are already doing everything perfectly, uh, maybe you won't get anything out of it, but just for the heck of it, I do want to do it. So, of course, when you log into ZipForms, this is where you first end up. And I guess the first thing I wanted to mention is there are many of you who have 20, 30, I've seen 50, 60 from some of our uh, longtime veteran agents, maybe over 50 active transactions. Which of course is probably not really true. So it would be beneficial to you and also to Shelley and I when we're doing audits and reviewing stuff. If you took 20 minutes one day and went in and updated the statuses of any of your transactions, probably some of those active transactions are now inactive and not likely to return, or maybe they're just prospects now. You thought maybe you were going to do something, but it didn't turn into anything. So I'm just going to jump into this transaction for a minute. So when you jump in a transaction, of course, right here at the top is where essentially you, the agent, control um, some, but not all, of the statuses. Essentially, you're going to decide if a transaction is in the prospect stage, the active stage, the pending stage, or the inactive stage. Only Shelley moves transactions to close, so please don't ever do that because there's certain steps that we have to do on our end before a transaction is moved to close status. And you'll probably never want to use the fell through status before either. And we've had this happen a few times where an agent had a buyer under contract or something like that, and then the contract fell through. But the buyer is still an active buyer who's most likely going to put something else under contract, and so that even though, yes, deal number one, under contract number one fell through, you don't want to use the fell through status because Shelley and I we can't see uh, any of your documents that need review if the transaction's in fell through status. So I wouldn't ever use that. And again, jump in, unmute yourself at any point if you have any questions. Um, When you are in here in your transaction, of course, when you first go into a transaction, it's going to bring you here to the summary tab. There's very little here from a company standpoint that we require that you fill out. There are a few things, especially when you go under contract, that are super helpful and somewhat mandatory. I wish there was some way to change the ZipForm program to make certain fields mandatory. But if you don't fill in the purchase price and the closing date of your transaction, it won't populate to our pending transactions report. And if the transaction doesn't populate to the pending transaction report, then we can't sort of help monitor your deal as it gets closer to closing. And if your closing date isn't right, just a little sort of inside information. Shelley, our admin, Shelley Giuliano is probably the best in the business. She's incredibly efficient. She's incredibly fast. Her and I have been together for over 20 years. And even though you guys do really well and we have, quite a few closings, we don't have enough closings for me to keep her employed 40 hours a week, just paying out commissions. Hopefully someday that'll be the case. But she actually has another job in a tax office. And so if she doesn't see any closings on a certain day, she might not in the office or checking in at some point every single day. I literally cannot get her to take days off or time off. Despite nagging her to do so. But she does use the pending report and the closing dates to sort of set her schedule. So if you're not concerned about when you get paid, then that's fine. We do try to pay our agents as quickly as possible. Sometimes it's too late in the day, for that to happen. But if you're sort of hard up or you really need that commission as quick as possible, you're always welcome to text, call, or email Shelley, and coordinate with her, and she'll work with you as much as she can to make sure that if she's available, then she'll get you paid as quick as she can. I do want to mention that if you are making your own deposits at the bank, which is great, you do need to text or email the deposit receipt to Shelley. And the reason for that is just because you upload all your closing docs, which of course you have to do to get paid, until she knows that that deposit's been made, she can't actually pay you. And she doesn't just sit there in front of the computer, hitting refresh on the bank website to see, when a deposit hits. So getting that text or email with the deposit receipt, lets her know that you're closed, and you're good to go. The only other thing that we really, really need, and you'll want to go in and update it, but this, obviously, if you're the buyer's agent, you're not going to, but if you are the listing agent, you necessarily need to know what the buying side is doing. But we do need the commission information, and especially if you're splitting the commission with anyone, or there's a referral, or especially if it's an Opcity type referral, which is a whole other ball game. Uh, we do need to know that as well. So. Any questions or concerns about anything I've covered so far? Okay, so I'm going to create a new transaction to sort of get us started on what we're really here to talk about. Um, I'm going to do a listing here. Test for class. Oops. Okay. Uh, of course, you do have to pick a category, but it really doesn't matter. Oh, of course. Okay. I was going to say zip forms would, of course, be slow when I need it to work. So this is your first opportunity to select a template for the transaction, which is absolutely the first step that you need to do when you're creating the transaction. Most agents forget to do it here. It's easy to forget and you just kind of jump to save, which is totally fine, which is what I'm actually going to do. But I just wanted to point out that you can pick your template here. Um, but let's just assume that you do what I think happens in most cases is agents just hit the save button here, and pull up the transaction. So you're going to go to the documents field, of course, tab, and this is most likely where you're going to be adding a template. Right now, you're going to see this new listing docs template, which is the one I'm actually going to add to this transaction. If you still need a few days, maybe you're taking a listing later today or tomorrow or something, and you just need a little bit more time to wrap your head around the changes, and you want to use the old template, that's fine. It's right here. This will disappear um, early next Monday morning. So that will be gone, and you'll be stuck using the new template that matches our new policy. You don't have to go back if you have any existing listings. You don't have to go back and change those. Just this is just a new policy going forward for new listings. So that's the template that we're going to pick here. Okay, so it says my template's applied successfully. One of the things I did want to mention is that, of course, these templates have been created to have all the proper placeholders, almost all of the proper forms that you're going to need for your transaction. If you're in the mood and you want to clean up the transaction at all because there's documents in here that you don't need, let's say you don't need a lead paint addendum. You can actually click uh, on some of this stuff. Let's say, okay, I know I'm not going to do a home warranty, whatever the case might be. So you can select these check boxes and just delete those items for your transaction. That's perfectly fine for you to do that. The one document that isn't in the template is a property disclosure, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One, we don't necessarily know if you're listing a residential property or a land listing, so that would obviously determine what kind of template that you wanted to use, what type of disclosure you wanted to use. And additionally, we have created some templates um, for the different types of residential properties that you might have, whether it's public water and private septic, private water, private septic, or public water and public sewer. Um, so those have a lot of stuff already filled in that'll save you a bunch of time. So that's why they're there if you want to use them. There's one glitchy thing there's many glitchy things that ZipForm does. One of them, I don't know if it's going to do it here. It looks like it is. So I added that property disclosure, but now I can't find it. It's like, where the heck did it go? It's not all the way at the bottom. It's not all the way at the top. What unfortunately ZipForm does, and I've reported it as an error for years, and they don't fix it, is sometimes a form that you add to your transaction, maybe you want to start with a blank property disclosure, or you need some other form that we haven't already added to the template for you, which of course you can add from all forms, but then you can't find it after you've added it. Well, what ZipForms has done is it's added that form to the root folder. So if you click up here on the far left on folders, you'll almost often find that form that you added out here when it should have just put it right in the folder you were in. But you can click on this and just drag it right into the folder where you want it to be. And that click and drag feature is really cool to kind of clean up your transaction sometimes. Sometimes you'll get a lot of forms, outside of the folder they're supposed to be in, or you might want to combine signature packets. If you've got a lot of them, you might want to combine those into one folder because you can actually add a folder and create your own folder if you want to do that. So uh, again, any questions? Feel free to jump in at any time if you have any. All right, let me just check my list here of notes. All right, I think we're doing pretty good. Okay, so we're gonna jump down here to the exclusive right to sell listing agreement, which is where our changes have primarily taken place. One more thing I do want to point out before I do that. Um, Again, it's another zip form glitch. If you were going to if you were going to send this form or any form out for signature. Give this a second to catch up. ZipForm has this feature, which I think a lot of agents forget, which is totally fine, and I would actually prefer that you don't use it for reasons I'll get into. But there is the option to choose the folder for your return signed documents to go into, which is kind of a cool feature if it's a finished document that doesn't need to be sent to another agent for a seller signature or whatever the case might be, because it would put the document right in the proper placeholder for you. The problem is when you use this feature and you choose a folder to send the documents back to, it doesn't put the documents in Shelley and I's review queue to check those documents. So I really just assume that you don't ever use this option. Again, most of you are kind of sliding right by it anyway, which is great. It would be better if the documents just got returned to you the normal way, and then you go ahead and put them where they need to go. So, all right. So back into our workspace. So I'm just going to slide on down to page 3, which is where all of our changes are taking place. Again, just to clarify, the changes we're making do not affect anything on the buying side of the transaction. Buyer transactions operate the same exact way just because we're choosing not to do agency to agency commissions anymore, like a lot of our competitors have done. There are still many out there that do it. You are still allowed to get paid that way. That's perfectly fine. I do just want to mention two things about buying transactions. The first one being, and don't feel picked on if you and I have spoken about this recently. I'm not even talking about you. I go through this at least once a week, where I have to mention this to one agent, but we are now NAR and all realtors. We are under a federally mandated civil settlement. Uh, Short way of saying it is against the law to show property without a buyer agreement. And every week, on average, I'm seeing a transaction where either there wasn't a buyer agreement, or it was signed after a purchase and sale was written, or a property was shown, or it was signed the same day that an offer was made. If any one of these transactions ever goes anywhere, to the real estate commission, or there's an E&O complaint, or there's some issue, all those little things are going to get looked at. And essentially, what we're doing when we do that is we're documenting that we broke the law. Is it possible that you would meet a buyer and talk to them for the first time and sign them up and show them a property and write an offer all in the same day? Sure. That can occasionally happen. I'll give you that, but it's fairly rare. Usually there's some time before that where you're working with the buyer. So you got to have that buyer agreement ahead of time. So please make sure that you do that. And then the second thing is one of the reasons we're making this change is because in many cases, one or both agencies are not doing the transaction properly. They're not doing the paperwork correctly. The agent took the listing as an agency to agency commission situation, but then the buyer agent just wrote the seller paying commission in number 26 in the purchase and sales agreement. I'm seeing that 20, 30, 40% of the time, which is one of the reasons we're getting rid of agency to agency commissions. But if you're on the buyer side, don't just ask if there is a buyer agent commission being offered and how much it is. Make sure that you know where it's coming from. Is that coming from the agency, or is that coming from the seller? Because that's going to let you know which form to use, and that's going to let how to handle the whole transaction. Maybe the agency to agency commission's 2%, but you want an additional 0.5% or full percent from the seller. So you'd actually be using, both forms, or the agency to agency form, and writing something in the purchase and sales agreement. So Um, but we're just going to cover the listing side. That's the main thing, where it's going to affect you. So, uh, this is going to be blank in the template because different agents take, commissions at different rates for different properties and that sort of thing. But let's just say in most cases, you're just going to be entering in this top commission field the commission that you want to get paid yourself. And I think that's a pretty easy sell to a seller. I know one of our agents who's already been doing it this way for a while, just because that's the path that they took um, shortly after the changes came down the pike, and they're doing 3.5 on the seller side. But again, whatever number you choose to put in that top number going forward, that's just the commission that's being paid to you. Um, then you're going to need to make the choice. If you are not representing the buyer, if it's just a buyer customer, do you want to get paid any extra? And I think in a lot of cases, agents are asking for an additional 1% if they had to handle all the stuff that a buyer agent would normally do. Kind of at this point that I also like to point out, because I still, at least I'd say once a month, run into an agent who thinks that they have to be representing the buyer um, to get, well, and this will be a good clarification. I was going to say all the commission. Of course, again, in the past, the commission might have been 5 or 6%. And yes, to get all of it, you either would have needed to be working with the buyer as a customer, or you could have been working with them as an agent, but you wouldn't, have had to worry about your commission. Now, if you do happen to be the buyer agent on, if you do dual agency, you're going to be getting paid on the buyer side under your buyer agreement. So you are going to, you would have to either have the buyer pay you or ask the seller to pay additional. This section here is just for a buyer that's a customer. And I would say in most cases, I'm not a huge fan of dual agency. We do allow it in our agency. If you think you can handle it, go for it. But in most cases, I would say if you can let the buyer remain a customer, um, that's probably the better way to go. If they're a new first-time buyer with tons of questions and it's going to create a ton of liability if they're not represented, then maybe you should refer them to another agent in the office and get a referral fee. But uh, if you are going to ask for additional commission in a buyer customer situation, you will want to check this box and put whatever additional percentage you want here. Um, One of the best things that personally that I think about getting rid of agency to agency commission is we get rid of these pesky ranges that have I've been tormenting many of us for years, whether they were 2 to 4% or 1 to 2% or 0 to 5%, whatever the case might be. Those have completely gone away. So this is what the template will look like when you use it. Of course, this box is checked yes. We continue to cooperate with all other agencies and agents acting as buyer agents. However, this box is going to be checked no. We don't share in compensation anymore. So we've got all this the range section all crossed out. Same goes for transaction brokers. Um, the two next sections remain the same as they have now, um, because some of you were essentially not offering agency to agency commission, and so these needed to be left open, and they remain open for you to use. I'm going to fill this out the way I think many of you are typically going to do it, which is that you are going to convince the seller. And I do think it's really good for the seller to offer something to a buyer agent for a whole host of reasons. I think if the buyer doesn't have to fight to get their agent paid, I think that that's a good thing. So I think there's a huge marketing advantage, a huge sales advantage to convincing the seller that they should offer something. Additionally, by the seller preemptively, say offering 2%. I think, if an agent has to ask because there's no commission being offered whatsoever, hell, I'm going to ask for 3% on the buyer side if I have to ask. But I know a lot of agents in a lot of cases, and I'm not saying you should do this, but a lot of agents are settling for 2% if that's what the seller's already offering. So I think there's advantages to doing that. Again, I do know some agents in the company who are not lobbying, not fighting for their sellers to offer anything, and they just tell the other agent to negotiate or ask for whatever they want in the offer, and that's what happens. Um, I've had agents tell me that they've had situations where they had multiple offers, and some of the offers just didn't include any commission at all. The buyer's agent said, "Nope, my buyer's going to take care of me, and we just want our offer to be as strong as possible, and so we're not asking your seller to pay anything." And so, again, it always comes down to net. Maybe the highest offer is over asking price and includes a 3% commission to the buyer agent, but it's still the net highest offer of all the offers that were made. So. It always, comes down to the net offer. So I think in most cases, or a lot of cases, the seller is going to choose to offer something. Um, and so if they do, you're going to check that box. You're going to check seller agrees to offer direct payment to buyer agency, and let's just say 2%. I don't think it's necessary for a seller if especially if they're going to offer some buyer agent commission. I don't think there's any reason for them to offer any other concessions. I mean, the 2% buyer agent commission is a concession, but if there was some reason the seller didn't want to call it a buyer agent fee and they wanted to just offer something to the buyer that the buyer could use to pay their agent, then that's fine. Again, maybe a lot of you will just choose to, or the seller will choose to just leave it up to negotiations. It'll be interesting to see how that turns out. And then this last section here, um, this agency's policy is to compensate other agencies. Again, no, we're not choosing to do that anymore. And then so I've crossed that out. And then no, our company doesn't pay our in-house agents more for selling an in-house listing. We pay you the same, irregardless it's one of our listings or not. So that's essentially the crux of all the changes. I'd kind of like to open it up, now for questions, whether it's, implementation or, whatever aspect it might be. There is a question. You can answer questions in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and do it that way. Cindy asked, is it important to use the seller compensation item? That's a great question. I'm actually going to go back into Zip Forms real quick. Yes, MAR has designed a great form for us. I think, again, especially if you're on the buyer agent end, you're going to be using one of the addendums. I would use the addendum rather than just writing it in section 26. But does bring up one other thing I wanted to demonstrate, and I'm going to do it on this listing agreement, even though this is not where it would normally go in the contract. But anytime you're in like an other conditions section or somewhere like that, if you click, you'll see this add clause button come up, and this is going to bring you to the clause library. Currently there's 34 pre-existing clauses for more uses than you can imagine. If you are not familiar with all of the clauses in the clause library that are available to you, I think you should do what I did. Go into Zip Forms, create a test transaction that you can just mess around in and, open up a blank addendum or whatever, and go ahead and take a look at add any of these clauses to your form that you want to take a look at that maybe you're not familiar with. Again, this is kind of a weekly occurrence. I'll have an agent reach out to me and they'll explain a whole scenario and they're wondering how they should handle it. And I'm like, well, actually, there's already a clause in the clause library that addresses this, or there's already a form in the forms library that addresses this. So, again, same thing. Create a fake transaction, uh, go into all forms and review all the forms that are available to you. And if there's any form that you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that existed, or what is that form for? I'm not familiar with that. Add that form to your transaction and go ahead and review it. If you were a carpenter, then zip forms would be your toolbox. And we're realtors. And so zip forms is basically our toolbox. And if you don't know all the tools that you have available to you to work with, then you're kind of really, really missing out. Same goes with the MLS. I post a lot of MLS videos to the Facebook group. Um, and that's because there's so much power there. There's so much that you can do. But if you don't, if you're not familiar, if you haven't educated yourself to what you can do, then you don't know. So one of the many clauses, and if you didn't want to use the form, is you can use this seller compensation um, clause, which see if we can get that right. So, clause is pretty simple. The payment to buyer agency, whoops, that's the second sentence. Seller agrees to pay buyer agency X% of purchase price at time of closing. Payment to the buyer agency shall be made in addition to cooperative compensation, if any, offered by the listing agency to buyer agency. Do you really need that sentence if the listing agent told you up front there was no agency to agency commission? No, you don't really need that. Um, but you can delete that if you know you don't need it and just stick with this simple sentence and go from there. Uh, Anyone else with any comments or questions? Maybe this is simpler than I thought. Maybe this isn't a major change. I don't think that you'll find it affects your day to day very much. A lot of agencies are already doing this. I just kind of wanted to bring us more in line with what's actually being practiced, in the day to day. I've had many agents come to me over the past couple of years with sellers who just couldn't grasp the ranges. Well, you said you're only charging, you said you're charging me 5% and you're giving the buyer agent 2.5%, but this says 0 to 5, and I don't why doesn't it say 0 to 2.5? Or just many sellers couldn't understand it. Many agents didn't always feel comfortable with it. So I'm totally happy with getting rid of it. So any questions, concerns from anyone? I feel like there's got to be some, but if you'd rather not voice them here, you can certainly reach out to me privately. You can reach out to your office owner to go over any of this that might be of concern to you. If no one has anything, I will wrap this up. Would you recommend direct payment to agency or seller concessions? I would do direct payment to agency personally. You're probably not going to do both, and that's the first option. So I'd probably just uh, go there. But that's a good question, Carla. Anyone else? Any questions? Any thoughts? If not, I'm gonna thank you for coming, and like I said, reach out if you have any questions or concerns going forward. Have a good day, everybody.